Hello, this is Kathy Gale, Executive Director of Interfaith Senior Programs. This webinar will be brief and to the point, but give you a little bit of background information in preparation for our April 15th meeting. I'll be giving you an update on the work of Thriving Waukesha County Alliance, a brief update on the Transportation Affinity Group, a description of your role in our ongoing process, and reviewing meeting details for the April 15th meeting. So just a reminder of the purpose of our project. Transportation for seniors and adults with disabilities has been identified as a challenge by the Specialized Transportation Provider Network, or STEPN group, several years ago, as well as nonprofits that are serving these populations, family caregivers, healthcare systems, but most importantly, the riders themselves have identified that transportation is a big challenge for them. So specifically the role of the STEPN group. Many of you have been active in this group and attended meetings. So the STEPN group has been on hiatus since February of 2014 when the Thriving Waukesha County Alliance group decided to choose transportation as one of their areas of focus for 2014. So that began the involvement with the Thriving Waukesha County Alliance, or TWCA, Transportation Affinity Group, or TAG, as you see it on the slide here. STEPN members were asked to be very active and participate in data gathering, and several members are active on the Transportation Affinity Group. So the Thriving Waukesha County involvement. Thriving Waukesha has provided funding for professional facilitation of the Transportation Affinity Group's work over the last 12 months. Thriving Waukesha has also assisted in leveraging resources to help with the data gathering. So the first thing that we did about 11 months ago was to form the Transportation Affinity Group, or TAG. And this overall group has had 53 individuals participating, representing 31 different organizations. And those individuals started meeting in April of 2014, including many of you. Over the first few months, we worked on developing a common purpose, which is ensuring that Waukesha County possesses a transportation system that meets the needs of those who receive and those who provide health and human services in Waukesha County. So the next step was to form a smaller group to work on specific initiatives within this Transportation Affinity Group. And we formed this group and call it the Steering Group. So here's just a list of organizations that are represented on the Steering Group for the Transportation Affinity Group. Thriving Waukesha County Alliance, Interfaith Senior Programs, myself and our Mobility Manager, Margot Shields, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Waukesha County Government has representation from the Aging and Disability Resource Center, Public Works, and the Community Development Program. We also have representation from United Way of Greater Milwaukee and Waukesha County, Common Ground, and two of our senior taxi programs, Lake Country Cares Cab and Elmbrook Senior Taxi. The main efforts have been spent in data gathering between June 2014 and March of 2015. So if you remember, we talked about the fact that it had been identified that transportation was a challenge for seniors and adults with disabilities. And there was nobody that was saying, no, I disagree with that. But we needed to spend some time determining what that specifically meant. Was it too expensive? Was there not enough? Was it not available when people needed it or going where people needed it? Was it one particular area of the county? There were a lot of questions, but there was not a lot of factual information to really dictate what we needed to do to solve the issue. So we spent a lot of time gathering data, focus groups, surveys, individual meetings, one-on-one interviews with people, and gathering a lot of information. So this slide shows you a section from the Thriving Waukesha County Alliance annual report of 2014, and we will have copies of that available for you at the meeting later in April. So here's just some highlights from that annual report. Our successes during 2014 included sharing resources to develop and gather survey and focus group data. So Thriving Waukesha put a lot of resources behind it. We also had mobility management grant dollars, New Freedom dollars, that went into facilitation and running the focus groups and making sure that we had enough structure for that. We needed to identify the unmet needs by sharing information and data among the group members. So even as members of the Transportation Affinity Group, we needed to talk about within our own organizations and programs what were the unmet needs that we were seeing. This was something rather new for most of us to start gathering. If people called and we didn't have capacity to give rides, we weren't necessarily documenting that. So that was something we started doing. So central themes and key findings are beginning to emerge, and here's a partial list. There seems to be a lack of awareness of services among the community, among riders, among family caregivers, and sometimes even among transportation providers. There's a lack of coordination of services. So we're not necessarily talking to one another as transportation providers maybe as much as we could. We're still kind of existing just in our own program, and the riders have to go back and forth and try to figure out the system. There are critical barriers to transportation. We heard from the riders that it's not always affordable, it's not always accessible, and by that they meant that it wasn't always available when they needed it, and it didn't always take them where they needed to go. And it wasn't flexible enough. So one person might need to go across 2 or 3 municipal boundaries, but one transportation program didn't have the capacity or availability to be able to respond to that kind of a request. And we suspect the client transportation needs are greater than the data is showing. That we came to because in the focus groups, we learned that a lot of the riders don't want to ask for help from their family and friends, and if they can't afford the transportation options, they simply don't go where they need to go or where they want to go. We also gathered input from transportation providers, from you. So in 2014, you may remember, we held a meeting at the ADRC offices, and that was facilitated by Nada Abbott. And that was the meeting where we had big Post-it notes up around the room. We got up and we did some voting and came to some central areas that we needed to focus on. And just recently, you were asked to complete surveys about your specific organization and program. And then many of you had individual meetings with Margot Shields, our mobility manager, between September of 2014 and February of 2015. So, where are we and how are we preparing for this upcoming meeting? The data gathering is complete. Initial findings are being developed, and now your input is needed to help form the solutions. So your role at the April 15th meeting. We're going to ask you to come to this meeting thinking not only of your organization, but also the broader community of Waukesha County. We're going to ask you to consider 3 open-ended statements, and these will be emailed to you in advance to think about. You are welcome to write down ideas and bring them to the April 15th meeting. And if you cannot attend, we strongly encourage and really ask you to email your thoughts to Margot by April 14th so that we can incorporate your thoughts in the work that we do on April 15th. So here are the 3 open-ended statements to help people know transportation options before they need them. So the goal here is for you to think about ways to complete this sentence. It could be brief, it could be a longer thought, it could be 1 or 2 words. We want you to be as creative as you can be. And again, not only thinking of your program, but the community overall. To help people know transportation options before they need them, what would come next? Here's the second one. Effective transportation collaboration looks like. Effective transportation collaboration looks like. And the third, to make it easy for customers to schedule a ride, So again, thinking at that community-wide level, to make it easy for customers to schedule a ride, how would you complete that sentence? And you may have several different ideas. Now again, those will be emailed to you so that you can think about them and you can jot down ideas if you'd like to. So here are the meeting details. Wednesday, April 15th, 2015, we're going to assume that your taxes are filed. We'll start at 10 a.m., go till noon. We'll be meeting at the Citizens Bank of Mukwonago, where we had earlier meetings, the Waukesha location, the community room on the second floor. And the bank asks that we park on the west side of the bank. And here's the address for you, 2109 Corporate Drive in Waukesha. So if you have any questions, you are welcome to contact Margot, our mobility manager. Her phone number is here, and here's her email address as well. And Margot will be following up with an email to you shortly with these 3 questions for you to consider. Thank you so much for making time in your schedule. We know it's not easy, but your input is really important as we start moving towards solutions. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you on April 15th.